The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, are the familiar welcoming words of the first verse of the 23rd Psalm, loved by many. I love these words too. However, later in the psalm, in verse 5, I run across some words that puzzle me. Verse 5 reads, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." What puzzles me about this verse is the simple question, who are the enemies of the sheep? History and legend identifies King David as the author of this psalm, and if that is the case, then the enemies of the sheep could be the wolves that seek to dine on those sheep, the wolves that David remembers from his boyhood as a shepherd. The image of wolves and sheep as enemies has never sat well with me, primarily because of the nuance in the word enemies. If you consult the Oxford English Dictionary, enemy has two primary definitions. The first is a person who is actively opposed or hostile to something or someone else. The other definition is a thing that harms or weakens something else. In the past, I have raised the question that without the intentionality I have previously read into these definitions, can sheep and wolves actually be considered enemies? It's not as though they are actually at war with one another. Specific wolves do not have problems with specific sheep with which they have a vendetta. Nothing seems personal. Sheep and wolves are in fact both just trying to eat. It just so happens that sheep prefer grass and wolves prefer sheep. It's not really personal, though. So does that really make them enemies, or is that just the way it is? The answer to that question depends on who you ask. I'm sure that if asked, wolves would poetically justify that they are merely taking what they need to survive, that it is truly not personal, and when they get enough, they'll leave the sheep alone, although with the caveat, well, until we're hungry again. Wolves, undoubtedly, do not see sheep as an enemy. They are not threatened or opposed by them. The wolves do not worry about the opposition of the sheep. On the other hand, I'm sure that the sheep would describe the situation very differently, because the lives of the sheep are endangered. Their grass-eating, baaing, and growing of wool is of little defense for the teeth, claws, and nefarious packed mentality of the wolves. The sheep are naturally on the defenseless side of the way it is, or the way it's always been. Even if it's as simple as wolves doing wolf things, those wolf things, at their core, are threatening to the lives of the sheep, intentionally or not. Wolf things are hostile to the everyday existence of the sheep. So, to my original question, can an enemy be an enemy without intentionality? The wolves might not consider it intentional or personal, but the sheep have to intentionally stay alive, ever vigilant, minute after minute and day after day. The wolves do not see sheep as enemy or threat. However, the sheep live in threat. They grow in threat in anxiety, never knowing when or where the wolf might be. In this interaction, the sheep has enemies that threaten their lives, and the wolves simply have an opportunity to eat. To return to the words of the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." This is what all of humanity desires, not to want, to not be in want, wanting for peace, wanting for our lives, wanting for equality, wanting for the way things are to be different, wanting others to see that just because one person doesn't take things personally, it can still hurt, traumatize, or kill others. These are the things that the words of this psalm point to, that come from following the shepherd. Shepherds being those sent to protect the sheep from those who seek to kill and devour them. Shepherds are sent to guard the sheep, to ensure their safety, to back down what the wolves would try to write off as the natural order of things, for a new way of living and loving and coexisting, where all lives are seen as equal. There is an equality that we as people conceptualize, but do not consider in reality. The life of a wolf and the life of a sheep are equal, though one would not throw the two in a pen together, watch as the wolf murders the sheep, and then throw up their hands saying, "Well, all lives are equal, so that was fair." The defenseless sheep would not stand a chance to the vicious claws and hungry teeth of the wolf. So what does our Good Shepherd do? What precedent does the Good Shepherd set? And again, we find ourselves in the words of the 5th verse of the 23rd Psalm. "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." This verse contains both gospel and trust entwined together. The gospel is powerful and simple. God sets a table and invites all of existence to that feast. The trust is that those who have been the meal, have been devoured, have been attacked, they too have a safe space at the table. The wolf has no need to trust. It feels self-reliant, self-assured. In a word, it feels privileged, whether it knows that or not. However, the sheep remain skittish. The sheep desire to not want. The sheep desire to approach the table like the wolf, but the wolf has never allowed that to happen before. But this is not the wolf's table. It is the shepherd's table. And to quote Malcolm X, "What's good news for the sheep might be bad news for the wolf. For at this table, things will change for the wolves. The wolf will have to change its diet. The wolf will have to change its lifestyle. The wolf will have to change its actions. The wolf cannot continue to do things the way they've always been done, because aware of it or not, the way things have always been done leaves a wake of fear, trauma, and death behind them. The world will not change if it does not change, and the world needs to change. This is the shepherd's table. The wolf is not invited to the table because it is the enemy of the sheep. The table is prepared for all of creation, and in that gathering we see all, those that support and encourage, those that threaten and harm. We are gathered at the shepherd's table, which is an act that might be met with suspicion from the sheep that have been fooled before, that have been tricked before, that have lost their lives doing the things they saw the wolves doing, and not knowing that a wolf in sheep's clothing often gets fed, whereas a sheep in wolf's clothing often ends up dead. But this is the shepherd's table. In the words of David's beloved psalm, we see an image of a table set by the Good Shepherd and prepared for all of creation. A table that might gather all of the cosmos to God's holy feast, wherein we are anointed, where the cup overflows, where goodness and mercy shall follow, where the rod and the staff of the shepherd call to order peace and safety for all. But to get there, we cannot stay here. We must move forward, because the world will not change if it does not change, and our Good Shepherd calls us to change it. Amen.